This is Brandon Hill, and today I'm going to teach you how to learn arrangement and sound selection by using a reference track in Maschine. Let's get into it. I have a project here loaded up in Maschine, and one issue that comes up again and again with Maschine users is that they don't know how to make a full song or a full arrangement. And this is something that I had trouble with too, and I wanted to share with you a technique in Maschine that I've been using on actual commercial songs to get better at arrangement. And that's by using what's called a reference track. And a reference track is simply a song that you want to reference in order to learn something from it. So for example, if I had a song that I really admire and I want to create an arrangement similar to it, I would use a reference track in here. And all I did here is that I inserted a clip and I inserted the audio file of the song. And my point of inserting this reference track is so I could analyze the arrangement of this song as it progresses. And then once I have that arrangement laid out, which I do here, then I could kind of see a big picture and see how an arrangement works and how the elements come in and out and what kind of effects are on those elements. You could use a reference track to learn how to arrange, and you could also learn a reference track to work on sound selection. So if you're learning a new genre, for example, you could download an MP3 file and convert it to a WAV file, and then you could drop it in here, and you could listen to the sounds and start to choose sounds that sound just like it. So this would just be for a learning purpose where you're trying to see how the sounds they chose in this song sound and how their mix is. But if you choose all the same sounds in the same arrangement, you're essentially copying the song. So this is strictly for, learning, and it's not to copy the song and change up a few things and release it. So this is the reference song. Like I said, I usually do this with commercial songs, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm not doing it because this video would have a copyright strike. So this is the reference track I just got off of Epidemic Sound, which is a site where you could use these songs commercially or in YouTube videos. So this is the reference track. I chose a house beat. Let me skip through some of it. Okay, so let me walk you through what I did here and why it's important. And then I'll show you how to do this from scratch. I won't do the entire thing from scratch because this does take a lot of time, but I wanted to do this with this beat to understand how to arrange a house beat. All I did here is whenever I would listen to this, I created a new group when I heard a new element come in, such as a chord progression or a clap or a kick, etc. I just created a new group, and I would call this kick, for example. And whenever I heard the kick in the song, I'd add a clip and label it kick. Like I said, we'll do this from scratch in a second, but I listened to the song in 4 and 8 bar chunks, and I did this for the whole song. So at the beginning here, you could ignore this reference. All we have for the first 4 bars is this chord progression. And I labeled that the filter is opening because it starts off with a closed filter and the filter opens up. So let's listen to these first 4 bars here. And I will just loop it. So you're going to hear this chord progression, filter opening up. So you hear that? And then I was listening, and right at this bar 4, I heard this clap start to come in. So here, the clap is introduced, so that's why I created a new group and hit clap. Clap. Now we get to over here, and in this particular song, all these elements came in at once. So this little thing right here, there's a crash symbol. You'll hear this crash. You hear the kick, you hear the open hi-hat, you hear the bass, and you hear the shaker sound, which is very subtle, but you have to listen closely. And doing this requires good listening skills and being able to differentiate what a kick, open hi-hat, and a bass is. So that comes in here. And then it continues, and right here, some elements are cut out for a little bit of tension and release. So you could hear the elements cut out here, and then they'll come back in. Okay, I'm back here. One of these groups got deleted, but I noticed that once we got to here. So this little break happens, and then you'll hear these strings come in right here. This high-pitched strings. So you hear those strings come in, and now you can see you're starting to get an idea of how a song progresses. Starts off, we have a clap, we have a sort of drop here, no build up, but we have a drop, meaning that it has all the elements. And then after 8 bars or so, the drop progresses by adding those strings. Now we're going to get into a breakdown right here, and you're going to hear this sweep sound that leads into this breakdown. And then with the breakdown, you're going to have this chord progression with the filter again, a kick with the filter, a bass with the filter, and the strings with the filter. So essentially everything has a filter right here. So listen for this sweep, and then we go into the breakdown. Okay. And I should have said this earlier, but I just want to tell you that all of these clips are empty. There's no sounds on any of them right now, because at this stage, I just want to map out the arrangement. So all I did was add an empty clip like this. So all of these clips are empty. Later on, if you wanted to recreate the song, you could create all these empty clips, and then you could start adding elements into the kick, the open hi-hat, etc., to match your reference track. So I'll kind of get into that briefly at the end of the video. So we have this breakdown right here, and we have some elements cut out, and then we have a drop again. And you're going to have this reverse reverb, a reverse cymbal. Okay. Then we're going to have another breakdown again, and there's this pad sound. So there's this textured pad sound. There's also a downlift. So you can hear, that's the downlift right there. Then you're going to have a riser here. You can hear it starting. You're going to have this reverse cymbal and then a crash. Okay. You have the clap come in. You're going to have a snare roll here, and then you're going to have this crash cymbal. Okay, and then the song progresses through this 8 bars of the drop. It progresses with the strings, and then right here, there's this other melody that comes in. And then lastly, you have this outro. Okay? Okay, so that is the arrangement. I've mapped out this arrangement, and let's jump to a project where I just have the arrangement, and I'll show you kind of how to do this. So let's delete all of this here. Okay, so now I just have the reference track. It's going to sound the exact same because all those clips were empty anyways. Okay. So I would do this 4 or 8 bars at a time, like I said. So the first thing we hear is that chord progression. So I'm going to label this chord progression, right? Just going to double click, and you could just set it out a certain amount of length and refine it after. I'm just going to say chord progression, and you could use shorthand if you want. Filter opening, okay? That's all I hear for these 4 bars. So here I have a clap, and the clap starts here. Okay, and this filter's already opened up at this point, so I'm just gonna say progression here because the filter's already open at this point. Let's drag this out and see what happens later in the song. Okay, so right here, we go into the drop. We still have this progression going. Now let's just loop this part. So we hear the clap. Okay, so this is where the drop happens, right about here. I'm just going to create another clip, even though it didn't change, just to differentiate the start and end point of a scene. You could also just duplicate like this, Control D, if you want to do that throughout this process. So I hear a kick, so I'll create a group, put kick, start that here, kick. There's a bass for sure. We have the open hi-hat. And it's very faint and subtle, but you could hear this small shaker in the back. It's just a little shaker sound that happens every few bars. Okay, so I don't want to bore you by doing this whole thing, but this is the process that you would do. And yes, this is tedious, but it really does help you learn arrangement a lot. So let me go back to the original. And it helps you learn arrangement because you could see this project and you could start to see how one would arrange a beat. You could have a 4-bar scene that just has the chord progression. You could have a scene that has 8 bars here that just has the progression and the clap. You could have another 8 bars where you have these elements here, another 8-bar scene where you have this and introduce the string. And you could see how they structure the breakdowns, the drops, etc. And you could do this with any genre that you make in Maschine. Now, to get to the sound selection part, after we have all this, we could start filling them in with sounds. So you could find a chord progression of your own. So what I would do here is I would come to sound 1 and maybe I would go to instruments. And this doesn't have to be perfect, but you could listen to the reference and kind of find something that sounds similar. So maybe I'll come to let's see. Okay, let's use this. And you don't have to do the exact key and the exact chords. You're just doing this to put down a chord progression of some sort, just to have something to build an arrangement with. So let's go to chords mode and pick like a chord set. So we could listen to this here. And it's not the exact same progression, but we could do the same thing. So I'm going to mute this right here. Okay, so here I have this, and I'm just going to duplicate it. Just duplicate it on my keyboard to be quick. Okay, right? So now let's listen to this. Okay, and this is the reference. Okay, so now we can move on to the second part right here. So I'm going to copy this here because it's in this first clip, and I'm just going to put it in this clip here, and then duplicate that a few times because it keeps going. Now we could choose a clap. So let's listen here. So I'm going to go, and if you have a clap in mind, you could do this, but I'm just going to go to one shots, go to a house pack, for example. Let's go to drums, clap. And you just want to listen to see if you can find a similar sounding clap. That actually sounds pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to load the clap into this sound here. And now we're just going to put a clap on the 2 and the 4 using step mode. Just do this for a little bit. Okay, so let's listen to this now from the beginning. And this is the reference track. Okay, so you can see we're kind of on the same path. And you would simply do this with all of these elements here, fill them in with sounds that sound similar to your reference track. And that's how you could become good at sound selection. So if you do a bunch of hip hop sounds and you listen for the kicks or 808s they have, you can find something similar, use effects or whatever sound design to make your sound sound similar to the reference track. And you could start to get an idea of how the elements in that genre work. For house, for example, I'm always listening to the kicks, the claps that they use, where it is in the stereo field, if it has a, wide sounding clap, how does the bass sound, shakers, etc. And this is a great way to learn how to get from those, the loops that you create in ideas mode. How do you get from this loop into a full song? Once you start doing this with several songs, you're going to start to recognize the patterns. And this will help you in your own arrangement as well. So use reference tracks as a way to learn. If you're feeling stuck with an arrangement, you could map out an arrangement you have and fill it in with sounds from a different loop that you had, for example, and you could start to create songs of your own. If you like this video, please subscribe. I'll be making many more machine tutorials and I'll get started on those now. Thanks.